The next 3 days passed in a blur of impossible experiences. Jake barely slept as Luna taught him concepts that human science had not even dreamed of yet. The small dragon star whisper never left his shoulder, and through their growing bond, he began to understand fragments of the ancient language the elves used. Captain Rogers was not happy when Jake missed his shifts, but Luna had somehow convinced the station leadership that what they were doing was critical. The other two dragons, Ruby and Shadow Mist, had taken to flying through the station corridors, causing minor panic among the crew, until people realized they were harmless. On the 4th day, Luna brought Jake to a section of the station he had never seen before. Behind a wall that looked solid but was not, they found a room that should not exist. It was bigger than should fit in the station layout, and the walls showed star patterns that did not match any view from their location. "This is a pocket dimension," Luna explained, as Jake stared in amazement. "Your station has been built around an ancient anchor point. We suspected humans might be special when you accidentally built your first colonies near these points without knowing what they were." Jake ran his hand along, the walls feeling energy pulse beneath his fingers, like we were drawn to them. "Exactly." Luna moved to the center of the room where symbols began glowing beneath her feet. "Your species has an instinct for finding the important places, even if you do not understand why." Lord Artemis appeared without warning, materializing from shadows. Jake was getting used to the Elf Lord dramatic entrances, but they still made his heart race. The alien studied him with those burning eyes. "You have been teaching him the basics, daughter, but basics will not save anyone when the Void Seekers arrive." "Then teach us more," Jake said before he could stop himself. Both elves looked at him in surprise. Artemis raised an eyebrow that looked like liquid silver. "You presume? Much human." Jake felt Star Whisper grip tighten on his shoulder, giving him courage. "Look, you keep talking about how dangerous these Void Seekers are, but you are taking your time with mysterious lessons and vague warnings. If the threat is real, should not we be moving faster?" Luna covered her mouth, trying to hide a smile. Her father, however, looked genuinely thoughtful. "You speak like a human," he said, as if that was both an insult and a compliment. "Is that bad?" Jake asked. Artemis waved his hand, and the room filled with a 3-dimensional projection of the galaxy. Countless stars burned in miniature. But Jake noticed dark spots, areas where no light existed. 6 months ago, there were no dark zones. Artemis said, "Now look." The dark areas were spreading, slowly but steadily consuming star after star. Each one that went dark seemed to make the spread faster. "The Void Seekers do not just destroy," Luna said quietly. "They unmake. They return existence to nothing, and that nothing grows hungry for more." Jake studied the projection, noticing patterns in the spread. "They are following the anchor points like the one our station is built on." Both elves turned to stare at him. Artemis moved closer, the projection shifting to zoom in on their location. "You see, this after 4 days of training. It is obvious once you know to look," Jake said. "The spread is not random. They are following a network." Star Whisper chirped excitedly and flew off Jake's shoulder to dance through the projection. Her tiny form traced lines between anchor points, showing connections Jake had not noticed before. "The dragon sees it too," Luna breathed. "Father, he is the one." Artemis did not look convinced. "One human who can see patterns does not make a savior, then let me prove it." Jake said, "Give me a real chance to help. Not just lessons, but actual work." The Elf Lord considered this. "In 3 days the queens of the stellar courts convene. They will decide whether to flee this galaxy or stand and fight. You wish to attend this gathering, yes?" Jake said immediately. Luna grabbed his arm. "Jake, you do not understand. The queens are beings of pure energy, and thought just looking at them can drive lesser species mad. Then I will try not to look directly at them," Jake said with a small smile. "Look, I get it, I am just some random human who fixes things, but maybe that is what you need right now. Someone who sees things differently." Artemis laughed, and it sounded like solar wind through crystal chimes. "You would stand before the queens of creation and tell them how to fight the void, if that is what it takes." Yes, the Elf Lord looked at his daughter, who nodded slowly. "Then we have 3 days to prepare you," Artemis said. "And if you embarrass us human, If you fail to convince them, your entire species will be left behind when we evacuate. Jake felt the weight of that threat, but also the opportunity. If they evacuate the void, Seekers will follow eventually, will they not? Neither elf answered, but their silence was confirmation enough. That night, Luna found Jake in his quarters studying the star maps she had given him. The 3 dragons were curled up on his bed like strange cats, their scales dim in rest mode. "You should sleep," Luna said, sitting beside him on the small couch. "The training tomorrow will be harder." Jake set down the maps and looked at her. In the artificial light of his quarters, she looked almost human, except for the pointed ears and the way light seemed to bend around her. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. She nodded. "Why? Me, really, there are billions of humans. You could have picked scientists or soldiers or politicians. Why, a maintenance engineer." Luna was quiet for a moment, then pulled out a small crystal from her robes. Inside it, an image played out. Jake saw himself 2 months ago during the life support crisis. He watched himself working frantically, refusing to give up, even when the computer said the situation was hopeless. "My father sent scouts to observe your species," Luna said. "We watched thousands of humans. In crisis situations, most gave up when the odds became impossible. Some kept trying until ordered to stop. But you kept working, even when everyone else had evacuated that section. That was stupid, not brave," Jake said. Luna smiled. "Perhaps, but it was also exactly what we need. Someone who does not accept impossible as an answer." The crystal changed, showing other images. Jake helping injured miners. Jake staying late to fix systems nobody else wanted to touch. Jake sharing his food with new workers who forgot their lunch. "We watched you for weeks," Luna admitted. "You never did anything remarkable by your standards, but you consistently chose to help, even when it cost you. That pattern is rare." Jake felt uncomfortable with the scrutiny. "You were stalking me." "We were evaluating humanity through individuals," Luna corrected. "And you were not the only one we watched. But when Star Whisper saw the recordings, she chose you. Dragons see differently than we do. They perceive potential futures, not just the present, as if responding to her name." Star Whisper opened one eye and chirped softly before going back to sleep. "What do the dragons see when they look at me?" Jake asked. Luna's expression grew serious. "They see someone who might save us all or destroy us all. They cannot tell which, but they see you at the center of whatever comes next. That is terrifying," Jake said. "Yes," Luna agreed, "it is." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars through the small window. Finally, Luna stood to leave, but paused at the door. "Jake, whatever happens in 3 days, know that bringing you into this was my choice. My father blames me, not humanity, for the risk we are taking." "Why take the risk?" Then Jake asked. "Because Luna said the alternative is watching everything die slowly, and that is not really an alternative at all." After she left, Jake lay on his bed, careful not to disturb the sleeping dragons. He thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea that their fate might rest on his ability to convince alien queens to fight instead of run. Star Whisper crawled up to curl against his neck, her scales warm against his skin. Through their bond, he felt her confidence in him. It was not based on anything he had done, but on something she saw in possible futures. "No pressure," Jake whispered to the darkness. The dragon chirped softly, and he felt her amusement. Apparently, even ancient magical creatures appreciated sarcasm. Tomorrow training would continue, and in 3 days, he would stand before beings his mind could barely comprehend. But tonight he was just Jake Miller, maintenance engineer, with 3 small dragons on his bed and the weight of 2 galaxies on his shoulders. He closed his eyes and tried to sleep, wondering if being brave meant not feeling fear or just acting despite it. Either way, he would find out soon enough. In his dreams, he saw the void spreading across stars like spilled ink, and somewhere in that darkness, something vast and hungry turned its attention toward Earth. The training intensified beyond anything Jake had imagined. Lord Artemis was a harsh teacher who seemed to delight in pushing Jake to his breaking point. They worked in the pocket dimension where time moved differently. 1 hour outside was nearly A day within giving them more time to prepare, Jake learned that the universe was held together by songs' frequencies that resonated at levels human ears could not normally detect. The elves could hear these songs naturally, but humans needed help. Star Whisper became his translator, teaching him to feel the vibrations through their bond. "You are trying too hard," Artemis said as Jake struggled to lift a simple stone, using only the harmonic frequency Luna had shown him. Humans always try to force. Things listen, do not demand. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead, frustrated by his lack of progress. The stone had not moved at all, despite an hour of effort. Meanwhile, Luna could make entire boulders dance through the air with a simple hum. Different species, different methods, Luna said gently. "Father, it took our people millennia to master these techniques. He has had days. The queens will not care about his excuses." Artemis replied, "They will see only weakness." Ruby and Shadow Mist flew over to join, Star Whisper circling Jake in a pattern that created a strange resonance. He felt something shift in his perception, like adjusting the focus on a camera. Suddenly, he could sense the stone vibration, its unique frequency. Without thinking, Jake matched his breathing to that rhythm. The stone trembled, then slowly rose an inch off the ground. It was not much, but it was something. The dragons chirped in celebration, and even Artemis looked mildly impressed. "Interesting," he said. "The dragons create a harmonic field that amplifies your ability. I have not seen this before." Luna smiled proudly. "The bond between human and dragon is stronger than we expected. They are teaching each other." Later that day, as Jake rested, Luna showed him more projections of the Void Seeker's advance. They had consumed 2 more systems since yesterday. "How do they move so fast?" Jake asked. "They do not move through space like ships do," Luna explained. "They fold reality, consuming the space between places. When they arrive, everything simply stops existing." Jake studied the patterns again, noticing something new. "They are not just following anchor points, they are hurting us." "What do you mean?" "Look." Jake traced lines through the projection. "Every system they consume pushes refugees toward specific locations. They are gathering us together." Luna's eyes widened and she called for her father. When Artemis arrived, Jake explained his theory. The elf lord listened without interrupting, then studied the projection for a long moment. "The human is correct," he said, finally sounding disturbed. "They are not randomly feeding. They are orchestrating something." That night, Jake could not sleep. He wandered the station, finding himself in the observation deck where he could see real stars, not projections. To his surprise, Captain Rogers was there nursing a cup of coffee. "Miller." The captain said, "I have been looking for you. Sorry about missing shifts." Jake said, "I know this looks bad." Rogers turned to face him, and Jake saw exhaustion in the older man's eyes. "Looks bad. You disappeared with aliens who will not explain what they are doing. Half my crew is terrified of those dragons, and now I am getting reports of energy readings that make no sense." "Captain, I can explain." "Can you?" Rogers asked. "Because from where I sit, it looks like you have gotten involved in something way above our pay grade." Jake thought about how to respond, then decided on honesty. "They are preparing me to speak to alien queens about an extinction-level threat to the entire galaxy." Rogers stared at him for a long moment, then laughed bitterly. "Of course they are. And they picked you. Why exactly?" Jake shrugged. "Apparently I am too stupid to give up when things look impossible." That actually made Rogers smile. "Just like when you saved those miners." That is what Luna said. The captain was quiet for a while, then said, "Whatever you are doing, Miller, I hope you know the whole station is counting on you. Word has gotten out that something big is happening. No pressure, right?" Jake said weakly. Rogers clapped him on the shoulder. "Son, there is always pressure. The trick is not letting it crush you." The next morning, Luna woke Jake early. "The queens have agreed to convene," she said. "They will hear you speak." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Today, tonight," Luna corrected. "We have the day to prepare your arguments." They spent hours going over what Jake would say. Luna and Artemis coached him on protocol on how to address beings that existed partially outside normal spacetime. The dragons practiced flying in formation around him, creating the harmonic field that would protect his mind from the Queen's overwhelming presence. As the sun set over the dead planet below, Luna brought Jake special clothing. It looked like normal fabric but felt alive under his fingers. "This is woven from star silk," Luna explained. "It will help shield you from the worst of their radiance." Jake put on the outfit feeling oddly formal. It fit perfectly despite never being measured for it. "You look almost dignified," Artemis said, though his tone suggested this was surprising. "Thanks, I think," Jake replied. Luna approached and placed her hand on his chest over his heart. "Remember, they will test you. They will try to break your resolve because they believe humans are too fragile for this fight. And if they are right," Jake asked, "then we all die anyway," Luna said simply. "So we might as well try." The time came too quickly. Jake found himself standing in the pocket dimension, which had been transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. The walls showed not stars, but the spaces between them. The air itself seemed thick with power. 3 points of light appeared, and Jake immediately understood why Luna had warned him. The Queens were not really there, not in any physical sense. They existed as concentrated possibility beings of pure thought and energy that only pretended to have form for the sake of lesser creatures. Even with the dragon's protection, even with the star silk clothing, Jake felt his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. His nose began to bleed, but he stayed standing. "So this is the human." The first Queen spoke without words, her meaning simply appearing in Jake's mind, like static electricity, given consciousness. "Hardly impressive," added the second, small and fragile and already bleeding. The third Queen said nothing, but Jake felt her attention like the weight of a mountain. "Your Majesties." Jake began, his voice cracking slightly. "I come to propose an alliance. We know why you are here." "Little human," the first Queen interrupted. "The question is why we should care. Your species has existed for barely a heartbeat. You have no magic, no real technology, no empire among the stars." Because Jake said, forcing himself to continue, "We have something. You have lost." All 3 Queens focused on him, and Jake felt his knees buckle, but he stayed upright. "You have forgotten how to lose," Jake said. "Everything comes easy to you. You think in centuries while we think in days. You run from the void seekers because you can afford to retreat forever. We cannot bold words from a creature that will die in mere decades." The second Queen said, "Exactly." Jake replied, "That is why we fight harder. We do not have eternity to find perfect solutions. We improvise, adapt, overcome. Because for us, every moment matters." The third Queen finally spoke, her voice like whispers from dead stars. "Show us." Jake did not understand until Luna touched his shoulder. "Channel what you have learned," she said in his mind. "Trust the dragons." Jake closed his eyes and reached for the harmonic frequencies he had been studying. The 3 dragons began flying around him faster and faster, creating a resonance that grew stronger with each pass. Through Star Whisper Bond, Jake felt something new. Not just the songs of creation, but the gaps between them. The Void Seekers were not adding darkness. They were removing the music itself. But humans had always been good at making noise. Jake began to hum, no real melody, just the vibration he felt from the dragons. The sound was nothing like the elegant songs of the elves. It was raw, unrefined, almost primal, but it was also alive in a way the perfect harmonies were not. The stone from his earlier training rose from the ground, then another and another. Soon dozens of rocks were spinning around him in chaotic orbits that somehow never collided. The Queens were silent, and Jake opened his eyes to see them pulsing with different colors. "You create chaos music," the first Queen said. "Disorder given purpose. It is not perfect," Jake admitted. "But neither is survival. Sometimes you need noise to break the silence." The third Queen moved closer, and Jake felt his vision blur. "You would teach us to be chaotic like humans." "Not teach," Jake said. "Share. You have the power. We have the perspective together. We might find something neither could create alone." Artemis stepped forward. Your Majesties, the human speaks truth. The Void Seekers adapt to our ordered magic. They consume it like everything else, but chaos might be indigestible. Luna added, My dragons have bonded with him in ways we did not expect. They are learning from each other, creating something new. The queens consulted silently among themselves, their forms flickering between states. Finally, the first queen spoke. We will consider this alliance, she said, but the human must prove his species can contribute. How Jake asked, though he dreaded the answer. Tomorrow, the second queen said, You will face a Void Seeker fragment in combat. Jake felt his blood turn cold. A fragment, a piece of one that we captured, the third queen explained. If you survive, we will believe humans might be useful. And if I do not survive, then your species will be left to their fate when we evacuate. Jake looked at Luna, who seemed as shocked as he was. This was not part of the plan, but he thought about Captain Rogers' words about pressure and not letting it crush you. I accept, Jake said. The mining station orbited a dead planet at the edge of known space when Jake Miller received the strangest message of his life. The communication panel in his quarters lit up with symbols that shifted and changed before forming words in broken English. Human needed Doc 7. Bring no weapons, trust necessary. Jake was just a maintenance engineer on the Horizon Star. Nothing special about him except perhaps his ability to fix things that others had given up on. He stared at the message for a long moment before grabbing his toolkit and heading toward Dock 7. The station had been experiencing odd power fluctuations for weeks and everyone was on edge. The corridors were mostly empty at this hour. Most of the crew was either sleeping or working in the main mining shafts. Jake moved quietly, his footsteps echoing off metal walls that had seen better days. Dock 7 was in the restricted section, a place where only senior officers were supposed to go. As he approached the massive doors to Dock 7, they opened without him touching the controls. Inside the docking bay stood a figure unlike anything in the human database. She was tall and slender, with pointed ears that peeked through silver hair that seemed to move on its own. Her skin had a faint blue tint and her eyes were violet like deep space nebulas. But what really caught Jake's attention were the three small creatures perched on her shoulders. They looked like dragons from old Earth stories, but no bigger than house cats. Their scales changed color as he watched, shifting from deep blue to purple to silver. One of them chirped at him, a sound like crystal bells. Do not fear, human, the woman said, her voice carrying an accent Jake had never heard. My name is Luna of the Stellar Courts. I have traveled far to find you specifically. Jake set down his toolkit slowly, keeping his hands visible. Me specifically, I think you have the wrong person. I just fix things around here. The smallest dragon flew from Luna, shoulder encircled Jake's head before landing on his own shoulder. Its weight was almost nothing, but he felt warmth spreading from where its tiny claws gripped his uniform. Star Whisper chooses you? Luna said with what might have been surprise. She has not done this for 10,000 years. Look, Lady Luna, I appreciate the honor, but I really am nobody special, Jake said, trying to gently remove the dragon who refused to budge. Maybe you want to talk to Captain Rogers or Commander Chen. They make the big decisions around here. Luna stepped closer and Jake noticed she was floating slightly above the deck, her feet not quite touching the metal. The other two dragons watched him with eyes that seemed far too intelligent. You are Jake Miller. You saved the lives of 37 miners 2 months ago when the primary life support failed. You worked for 14 hours straight, refusing to give up even when others said it was hopeless. That was just my job, Jake protested. Anyone would have done the same. Luna smiled, and it transformed her alien features into something achingly beautiful. No, Jake Miller, not anyone would have kept trying when the odds were impossible. That is why I am here. The universe faces a threat that conventional weapons cannot stop. We need humans who do not give up. Before Jake could respond, the lights in the docking bay dimmed and a pressure filled the air that made it hard to breathe. A new presence had arrived, and Jake felt every instinct screaming at him to run. From the shadows near the observation deck emerged another figure. This one radiating power like a barely contained star. Lord Artemis of the Stellar Courts stood 9 feet tall. his robes seeming to contain glimpses of distant galaxies. His eyes burned with the light of dying suns, and when he spoke, the metal walls vibrated. "You brought a human to our meeting point, daughter." His voice was thunder wrapped in silk. This was not our agreement. Luna did not back down, even as her dragons grew agitated. "Father, the prophecy is clear. A human who knows no fear must stand with us, or all will fall to the Void Seekers." Jake wanted to correct her about the no fear part because he was definitely afraid, but the little dragon on his shoulder nuzzled his cheek, giving him an odd sense of calm. Lord Artemis focused his attention on Jake, and it felt like being examined by the universe itself. "This is your chosen champion daughter, this maintenance worker who smells of machine oil and processed food, father." Luna's voice carried a warning. "The Void Seekers have already consumed the Andromeda outpost. They move faster than our fleets can respond. We need human adaptability combined with our power." The Elf Lord descended from his position, floating down with grace that defied physics. He circled Jake like a predator evaluating prey. The dragons on Luna's shoulders spread their tiny wings, a protective gesture that would have been comical if the tension was not so thick. "Tell me, human," Artemis said, stopping directly in front of Jake. "What makes you think you could stand against entities that devour entire star systems?" Jake swallowed hard but found his voice. "I do not think I can, sir. But Luna seems to believe there is something worth trying here. If there really is a threat to everyone, then should not we at least try to work together?" Artemis tilted his head, studying Jake with those burning eyes. "You speak of cooperation, yet your kind has barely left your own solar system. You play with nuclear, fire, and think yourselves advanced. We are learning," Jake said, feeling oddly defensive. "We make mistakes, but we keep trying. That has to count for something, right?" "The little dragon?" Star Whisper chirped again. And to Jake's amazement, Lord Artemis actually smiled, though it was a frightening expression on his inhuman features. "The dragon speaks for you. That is unexpected." Luna moved to stand beside Jake, her presence somehow making him feel braver. "Father, please. The old ways are failing. The Void Seekers adapt to our magic and our technology separately, but perhaps together we can create something new. You ask much, daughter. To trust the fate of the galaxy, to this one human and whatever allies he might bring, not just him." Luna said, "All of humanity. They have something we have lost in our long lives. They have urgency. They act without centuries of deliberation. They take risks we would never consider." "Lord." Artemis was quiet for a long moment, the only sound, the soft chirping of the dragons. Finally, he spoke very well. "We shall test your theory, daughter. But know this, human, if you fail, if you betray my daughter, trust I will personally ensure your entire species learns the meaning of regret." Jake felt the weight of that threat, but also the weight of opportunity. He looked at Luna, who was watching him with those impossible violet eyes. She had crossed the galaxy to find him specifically. Him, a nobody, maintenance engineer, who just happened to be good at not giving up. "Okay," Jake said, surprising himself with how steady his voice sounded. "Where do we start?" Luna smiled again, and this time her father noticed the expression on her face. His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The dragons chirped in harmony, a sound like tiny celebration. "We start," Luna said, "by teaching you to hear the songs of creation, and by showing your people that the universe is far stranger and more dangerous than they imagined." She held out her hand to Jake, and he noticed it was trembling slightly. She was nervous too, despite her otherworldly grace. That small sign of vulnerability made his decision easier. He reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin touched Jake, world exploded into sensation. He could hear colors and see sounds. The little dragon on his shoulder sang, and suddenly he understood it was not just sitting there, it was bonding with him, creating a connection that would let him comprehend things human minds were not designed to understand. Through the connection he felt Luna relief and determination. He also felt her father's watchful presence, a weight of ages pressing down on them both. But there was something else too. A distant wrongness, like a hole in reality itself, growing larger with each passing moment. The Void Seekers, Luna whispered in his mind through their connection. They come whether we are ready or not. The night before facing the Void Seeker fragment, Jake found himself surrounded by people who had somehow heard about what was happening. Captain Rogers brought coffee, Luna stayed close teaching him last-minute techniques, and even Lord Artemis seemed less hostile than usual. The dragons had not left his side for hours. They seemed to sense the danger coming and responded by staying in physical contact with him constantly. Their scales had taken on a different quality, almost crystalline, as if they were preparing for battle. "Tell me about the fragment," Jake said to Artemis as they worked through combat scenarios. The Elf Lord created an illusion in the air showing a writhing mass of absolute darkness. It is hunger given form. It does not attack in ways you understand, it simply unmakes what it touches. Reality bends around it, rejecting its presence. How do you capture something like that? Jake asked. With great difficulty and significant loss. Artemis replied. We trapped it in a containment field powered by 3-star cores, but the field is weakening. It would have escaped eventually anyway. So this test is also disposal? Jake said. Understanding, Artemis nodded. If you fail, the fragment gets what it wants. Freedom and a meal. If you succeed, we learn if human chaos can affect them. Luna pulled Jake aside while her father prepared more training simulations. Jake, I need you to understand something. If tomorrow goes badly, I will try to save you, Jake. Shook his head. If it goes badly, you get everyone else out. Let the queens see that humans will sacrifice for others. It might be the only argument that matters. Luna eyes filled with an emotion Jake could not identify. You would die to make a point, not to make a point. Jake corrected. To give Earth a chance. If the queens see a human die fighting, they might respect us enough to help the rest, Captain. Rogers overheard this and laughed grimly. That is the most human thing I have ever heard. Miller dying for spite. Not spite. Jake said. Hope the buy. Captain pulled out a small device from his pocket. Take this, it is a recording drone, military grade. It will capture everything that happens tomorrow. What for? Jake asked. Rogers smiled sadly. Someone should remember you, kid. If this goes sideways, Earth deserves to know who fought for them. That night, Jake could not bring himself to sleep. Instead, he sat with the dragons teaching them human songs, simple melodies from Earth nursery rhymes, pop songs, even advertising jingles. The dragons seemed fascinated. By the lack of structure compared to elven music, they sing joy. Star Whisper said through their bond, her mental voice getting clearer each day. No purpose. Just joy. Ruby and Shadow Mist harmonized with a commercial jingle Jake had taught them creating. Something bizarrely beautiful. The mixture of dragon voices and human melody should not have worked. But it did. Luna watched from the doorway, smiling. You are teaching them to be chaotic. They are teaching me to be brave. Jake replied. Fair trade morning came too quickly. The queens had chosen a location for the battle, an asteroid that had been hollowed out and converted into an arena. Jake was transported there along with Luna Artemis, and what seemed like hundreds of other elves who had come to witness the event. The arena was massive, easily the size of a city. The walls were lined with shields and barriers to contain the fragment. Jake stood in the center, feeling very small. The queens appeared in their energy forms, hovering above the arena, like miniature suns human. The first queen spoke. Are you prepared to face the void? Jake checked his equipment, such as it was. The star silk clothing, some harmonic amplifiers Luna had given him, and his 3 dragons. Nothing that looked like traditional. Weapons ready as I will ever be. Jake said. The second queen gestured and a section of the arena floor opened. A containment cylinder rose from below, crackling with energy that made Jake's teeth ache. Inside was darkness, not shadow or absence of light, but aggressive nothingness that hurt to perceive. When we release it, the third queen said, You will have no help, no rescue. Your dragons may flee if they choose. The dragons responded by growing to their medium size, about as large as horses. They arranged themselves around Jake in a defensive triangle, their scales shimmering with stored energy. They choose to stay. Jake said. Then begin, the first queen commanded. The containment field collapsed. The fragment did not move toward Jake. It did not need to. Reality began unraveling around it, spreading outward in waves. Jake felt the air disappear from his lungs as the space near the fragment ceased to support life. The dragons reacted instantly, creating a bubble of stable reality around Jake, but he could see the strain in their eyes. This was not sustainable. Jake closed his eyes and reached for the chaos music he had been practicing. But this time he did not try to copy the elven songs or create harmony. He thought about Earth, about human music, in all its messy glory. He started with rhythm drum beats that humans had been making since they lived in caves. The dragons picked up the beat, their wings creating percussion against the air. Then Jake added melody, not the mathematical precision of elven songs, but jazz improvisation that broke every rule. The fragment paused its expansion. It had never encountered resistance like this before. Order it could consume easily, but chaos was different. Jake opened his eyes and saw the impossible. The fragment was struggling to unmake the space around him because the space kept changing. The chaotic music created reality that shifted too fast for the void to grasp. But it was adapting. The fragment began matching the chaos, creating anti-patterns that canceled out Jake music. He felt the dragons weakening their energy, depleting rapidly. Think, human, think. Jake muttered to himself. Then he remembered something Luna had said about void seekers. They unmake, they return existence to nothing, but what if nothing was not empty? What if he could fill the void with something it could not process? Jake reached for the recording drone Rogers had given him and activated its speaker function. Then he did something insane. Even by his current standards, he played Earth radio broadcasts at maximum volume. Hundreds of channels of human chaos flooded the arena. News programs, music advertisements, talk shows, sports commentary, all overlapping in magnificent discord. The dragons added their own voices too, the mix creating harmonics that should not exist. The fragment recoiled. For the first time since its creation, it encountered something truly incomprehensible. Not the ordered magic of the elves, but pure human noise, creativity without purpose, art without meaning, chaos without pattern. Jake pushed forward, walking toward the fragment while maintaining the cacophony. The dragons flew around him faster and faster, their forms blurring into streams of light. The combination of human chaos and dragon magic created something entirely new. The fragment tried to unmake Jake, directly focusing all its hunger on him. But the chaos shield held, constantly shifting. Never the same, twice impossible to negate. Jake reached out and did something even he had not planned. He touched the fragment. The contact should have killed him instantly. Instead, something else happened. Through the touch, Jake felt the fragment nature. It was not evil, just hungry. It existed to return things to base state, to create quiet in the noise of existence. But humans had always been good at making noise, even in the quiet. Jake pushed every human memory he had into the fragment through that touch. Birthday parties and funerals, rock concerts and lullabies, children laughing and adults crying. The entire messy, contradictory experience of being human. The fragment shuddered, then began to change. Instead of expanding, it contracted. Instead of consuming, it started creating, making shadows that were not empty, but full of potential. Queens descended into the arena, their forms blazing with power. "What have you done?" the first queen demanded. Jake stepped back from the fragment, which now looked less like void and more like a storm cloud full of possibilities. "I gave it indigestion," Jake said, then collapsed as exhaustion hit him. The dragons caught him in their larger forms, holding him up as the arena erupted in discussion. The fragment was contained but changed. No longer pure void, but something hybrid, impossible. The second queen said, "It should have consumed you." Jake managed a weak smile. "Humans are hard to digest, we are too chaotic." Artemis appeared beside them, his expression unreadable. You contaminated a Void Seeker fragment with humanity. Is that bad? Jake asked. The Elf Lord looked at the transformed fragment, then back at Jake. That remains to be seen, but you survived. You did more than survive. You changed it. The third queen approached, and Jake felt reality bend around her. Human, she said, you have proven your species' value. We will not evacuate. We will stand and fight. But more than that, the first queen added, we will learn. Learn your chaos music. Learn your impossible solutions. Luna helped Jake stand properly, tears streaming down her face. You did it. You actually did it. Jake looked at the fragment, which was now creating small objects from nothing, then unmaking them in an endless cycle. Like it was practicing. I think I broke it. Jake said. No. Artemis said with something approaching respect. You taught. It's something new that should not be possible. The recording drone was still functioning, having captured everything Jake thought about Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea their fate had just changed. We are going to need more humans. Jake said if we are going to fight the real Void Seekers, we need people who can think chaotically. The queens agreed. In 3 days, the second queen said, we will open portals to Earth. We will bring volunteers to learn what you have learned. 3 days, Jake said, then laughed. Not much time to prepare a planet for alien contact. Luna smiled. You will manage, humans always do. 3 days to prepare Earth for first contact. Jake stood in the command center of Horizon Star, surrounded by screens showing news feeds from around the world. Captain Rogers had established communication with Earth Military Command, but convincing them was proving difficult. Tell them to look at Sector 7, Luna suggested, pointing to a display Jupiter monitoring station should detect the energy buildup there. Jake relayed the information, and within minutes Earth astronomers confirmed massive gravitational anomalies near Jupiter. The readings made no sense according to human physics, that is the queens preparing the portals. Jake explained to the Earth Council, who had assembled via emergency session, they will open gateways in major cities to recruit volunteers. The president of United Earth spoke from the main screen. Mr. Miller, you expect us to believe that aliens need our help to fight cosmic horror? Jake held up Star Whisper, who chirped at the camera. Does this look fake to you, sir? The dragon waved a tiny claw at the screen. The room on Earthside went silent as they processed what they were seeing. General Morrison from Earth Defense spoke next. If this is real, what exactly are you asking for? Volunteers, Jake said. People willing to learn chaos magic to fight beings that unmake reality. We need musicians, artists, inventors, anyone who thinks outside normal patterns. And if we refuse, the general asked, then when the Void Seekers finish with this part of the galaxy, they will come for Earth. Jake said simply, the elves were going to evacuate, but now they are staying to fight because they believe humans can make a difference. The president rubbed his temples. How many volunteers? As many as possible, Jake said. But they need to understand this is dangerous. I barely survived training and I had advantages. What advantages? Another counselor asked. Jake smiled slightly. I am too stubborn to know when to quit. Over the next 2 days, Earth media exploded with the news. Surprisingly, many people believed it immediately. The footage from Jake's battle with the fragment had been transmitted, and even skeptics had trouble explaining it away. Religious groups called it revelation. Scientists demanded access to elven technology conspiracy. Theorists claimed they knew it all along. Artists and musicians began composing pieces inspired by chaos music, but most importantly, volunteers started signing up. Millions of them. Luna watched the registration numbers climb with amazement. Your species is either very brave or very foolish. Both, Jake said. Definitely both. Lord Artemis had returned to the stellar courts to coordinate the elven response. He left Luna in charge of preparing for the human arrivals. The dragons spent their time flying through the station, teaching the human crew basic harmonic theory. On the morning of the 3rd day, Jake stood with Luna at the observation deck. Earth hung in the distance, blue and white and perfect. Are you ready for this? Luna asked. Jake laughed. Ready. To introduce my entire species to aliens who want to teach them impossible magic. No, not really. She took his hand, squeezing gently. You have already done the hardest part. You proved we could work together. The portals opened exactly at noon Earth time. 12 gateways appeared in major cities around the world, glowing with elven magic. People gathered in crowds, some fearful, some excited, all curious. Through the portals came elven ambassadors, each accompanied by dragons like Luna. They spoke, in perfect local languages, explaining the situation, showing recordings of Jake battle, demonstrating small magics to prove their reality. The response was chaos, which was perfectly human. Some people fled. Others rushed forward to volunteer. Children wanted to pet the dragons. Scientists brought measuring equipment. Street musicians started playing for the elves, trying to create their own chaos music. Within 6 hours, the first wave of volunteers began arriving at Horizon Star. The station could not hold them all, so the elves created pocket dimensions, temporary spaces where thousands could train. Jake found himself appointed as liaison between humans and elves, a job he had never wanted but seemed stuck with. He watched former soldiers learning, beside kindergarten teachers, while rock musicians compared notes with physicists. A young woman named Katie Chen approached him on the second day of training. She was an artist from Seattle who had brought her guitar through the portal. Is it true, she asked, that you touched a void fragment and survived? Jake nodded, though I would not recommend it. She held up her guitar. Could music really fight these things? Not regular music, Jake said. But human music is different. We do not follow the rules. Prove it, she said. Jake called over the dragons who had grown comfortable performing for crowds. They harmonized while Katie played her guitar, creating something that made nearby elves cover their ears. The sound was objectively terrible, but somehow also powerful. Perfect, Jake said. That is exactly what we need. Training accelerated as more humans arrived. The elves were shocked at how quickly humans adapted to chaos magic. What took elven children decades to learn, humans grasped in days, not perfectly. Artemis noted when he returned. Many humans simply exploded things rather than controlling them. But explosion is still in effect. Luna pointed out. Our magic does nothing to void seekers. Human chaos at least causes reaction. The real test came 3 weeks later. Long-range sensors detected a full void seeker, not a fragment approaching the solar system. It would arrive in 4 days. The War Council convened with representatives from Earth, the stellar courts, and even some newer alien species who had heard about the human chaos defense. Jake found himself sitting at the table, still wondering how a maintenance engineer had ended up here. The Void Seeker is ancient, the First Queen said through her projection. It has consumed entire civilizations. It will not be confused by simple noise like the fragment was. Then we make complex noise. Jake suggested. We have 30,000 human volunteers now, plus your magic forces, General Morrison from Earth. Leaned forward Mr. Miller. With respect, these people are barely trained. We cannot ask them to face something like this. We are not asking. Jake said we are going together. Human chaos and elven order, dragons and technology. All of it. Artemis stood, his presence commanding attention. The human speaks. Wisdom alone, neither of our species can win. Together, perhaps we have a chance. Katie Chen raised her hand from the volunteer section. What if we create a symphony of chaos? Every human playing or singing or creating at once while the elves provide. Structure that is insane. Luna said, then smiled, which means it might work. 4 days of frantic preparation followed. Musicians composed pieces that deliberately broke musical theory. Artists created visual chaos that hurt to look at. Engineers built devices that should not function. But did Jake worked with the dragons, teaching them every human song he knew. They had grown stronger, feeding on human creative energy. Their scales now shifted through impossible colors that did not exist in normal space. The day arrived too quickly. The Void Seeker emerged from folded space near Mars, larger than anyone had expected. It was not just darkness, but aggressive nothingness that made space itself recoil. Its presence alone killed 3 monitoring stations before they could react. Every ship humanity and the elves could muster gathered between Earth and the approaching void. The queens themselves manifested in special vessels designed to contain their energy. Jake stood on the bridge of the combined command ship with Luna beside him. "This is it," Jake said over the communication system. "To every human listening, remember that we are not fighting with traditional weapons. We are fighting with who we are. Chaotic creative, impossible humans who never learn to give up." The volunteers responded with everything from battle cries to song lyrics to jokes. The elves winced at the discord, but maintained their positions. The Void Seeker approached, seemingly curious about the gathered forces it had consumed. Ordered resistance before, but this was different. On Jake's signal, 30,000 humans began their chaos. Music erupted from every ship, every frequency, every style all at once. Artists projected visual chaos onto the void itself, using elven amplifiers. Writers spoke stories that contradicted themselves. Engineers activated machines that broke physics but worked anyway. The elves wove structure through the chaos, not controlling but guiding, creating framework for human impossibility to flow through. The Void Seeker paused. Then it attacked not with physical force but with unmaking waves of nothingness that tried to erase the fleet from existence. But humans had learned something from Jake's experience with the fragment. They did not try to resist the unmaking. They filled it with so much chaotic creation that the void could not process it all. Every time the Void Seeker unmade something, humans created 3 new things in its place. Every silence was filled with noise, every darkness with chaotic light. The dragons flew between ships carrying the harmony between order and chaos. Their forms had grown massive, feeding on the combined energy of 2 species working together. Katie Chen led a group playing music that should not exist, notes that were not on any scale, rhythms that made no mathematical sense, but it worked because humans believed it would. The battle raged for hours. The Void Seeker grew frustrated, then something else. It began to change like the fragment had. Trying to understand the chaos. Trying to process creativity that had no purpose except to exist. Jake felt the moment of opportunity. He looked at Luna, who nodded. Together, Jake commanded. Every human and elf acted at once, not in harmony, but in deliberate, beautiful chaos. The queens themselves added their power to the mix, reality bending as order and disorder danced together. The Void Seeker shuddered, then did something unprecedented.